I mean, I wouldn't say they were upsets that we lost. We were upset about it, but I mean, we got beat by two good teams, and there's probably every year there's 5 or 6 in this. I think in our conference that are all national championship caliber, and we just happened to have them back to back to back to back, this time. But it was nice to get through with a split on those 4 games. I guess you want to look at it like that. 3-1 would have been better. 4-0 would have been great, but. We're pretty happy where we're sitting right now. We got a 1-game lead with 5 to play, and I think 3 of them at home. So we're still in a situation where we control our own destiny, and we don't need anybody's help at this point, to go into the region tournament with the top seed. But like I said, there's 5 more games, and anything can happen. I hope we don't put ourselves, in jeopardy where we got to have somebody else, step up and do something. Well, I think the thing that we learned from, we went back and tried to examine a little closer, what we did besides not make shots in those 2 games. But, some of our shot selection was like, oh, my goodness, and maybe we need to become a little bit more disciplined, a little more inside oriented. And to our guys' credit, I think they accepted that, and they, had a couple of days of, pretty good workouts where we really tried to, get back to playing, throwing the ball inside out first, and what have you. And it really paid some dividends against Howard. We came back somewhat with the same game plan against New Mexico, but weren't quite as successful. I mean, they're an awful big team, and I'm not sure they didn't set a record for block shots that night. But we extended the floor, and our full court pressure, I think, really wreaked some havoc on them. I think if we can trust our statistician and his stat sheet, they had 25 turnovers. The reason I don't think we can trust our statistician because he only had us down for 15, and it seemed to me like we had 35. But nonetheless, I think that was a big difference maker in the game. Well, we did early in the season, and then we kind of got away from it. We got into the league, and we didn't go with it quite as much, and for whatever reason, maybe it's nice to have that in your back pocket, to pull out occasionally and what have you. But we've been working a little bit more on it in practice than we have in the past, because I think it can be a tool to help us be successful when things aren't going so good. You can kind of it gives you an opportunity to change the tempo of the game, and I thought New Mexico struggled with it. They like I said, they're an awful big team, but they have like maybe 1 or 2 guards in there, so there's guys that you can kind of gamble with that if they throw over the top to certain people, they're probably not going to go through and finish. So we thought, hey, let's give it a shot and see what happens. And we got off to a great start, and it kind of gets us going on the offensive end too a little bit, So. That is something that I think we need to work more on, and that is when we come up with a steal, we need to convert more of those, those 3-on-2, 2-on-1 type situations. And at this point, I think if we really want to take the next step, those are that's a particular place we really need to focus on. We get steals and we don't convert, and that kind of stuff has got to change. I think if we're going to be a championship team. Clarendon's a tough place. I always leave there with a severe headache. They call it the dog house or whatever the nickname is, and that's appropriately named, I think. But by the way, it's always been a difficult place for us to go. We go in with usually more size than what they have, and we get up there in that situation, and you just cannot. You can't. Correctly describe it to people, or in particular to your players, particularly if they haven't been there, and because they get to running up and down the floor and shooting threes and what have you, and just everybody kind of gets caught up in it. So we've got, in my opinion, we need to go up there and go back to the approach that we had versus Howard. We're bigger than they are, so why don't we really try to focus on the inside? First trying to get the ball, down low where, we obviously have, some mismatches and what have you. But, they do a really good job of taking you out of what you want to do up there. They're getting closer to beating one of the top teams up there. I notice the scores, and every one of them are getting closer and closer and closer, and here we come, you know. So, I mean, everything is in order, you know. For if we play the way that we have, then I feel good about our chances. On the other hand, you know, if they continue to improve, you know, they got an excellent shot to really cause some damage. I mean, you come down the floor and you find yourself open, and it's what I was telling some people. My dad was in town and we were talking about. I said the thing about junior college sometimes is a team can do the wrong things defensively against you, and it works to their advantage. And that's kind of a crazy way of looking at it. But you know, you can run your offense, and you can make one or two passes, and your offensive players are not quite ready for the shot to go up. But defensively, that team was so bad, or they didn't get out there and cover, so the guy jumps up and shoots a ball, and you know that normally you don't expect him to, and it doesn't go in, and the next thing you know, they got numbers at the other end of the floor. And you know, at a high level, you can't leave a guy open. I mean, I've talked to several of my players that have left and gone on to the next level, and one thing that they've always said is, if a guy is open for a shot, the ball is going in the basket. And sometimes in junior college, it doesn't. And I mean, putting it mildly, you know. And so you really have to be careful, you know, that you get caught up in some of those things. But you know, all in all, I think we're playing. You know, we're back to maybe playing, you know, close to as good as we possibly can. You know, like I say, with the, you know, we need to improve on a couple of things. We need to improve our defensive rebounding. I think, you know, we're not. You know, I was a little disappointed in what our big guys did the other night. I think we had like 6 defensive rebounds in the first half against New Mexico, and don't look now, but 4 of them were our 2 guard, and 1 was our point guard, and I think 1 was one of the 3, 4, and 5 guys. And so, you know, that's nothing to be proud about. So, you know, there's an area that we can direct some attention to, you know, today and tomorrow before we play. Not that, you know, we're not the biggest team. I mean, we may have in a lineup or in a team picture, we may be the biggest team, but we usually don't have that many big guys on the floor at the same time. So at any given moment, we're a lot bigger than anybody. And I think we've only been out rebounded maybe 3 times this season, you know, and 2 of them were losses. You know, now New Mexico, they blistered us on the glass the other night, and but they turned the ball over so much in the game that it kind of made up for it. So, you know, we've got to do a better job of going after the defensive glass. Well, you know, up there, you know, if we're fortunate enough to come home, you know, with a W tomorrow night, then I think what we have, 3 of the next 4 are teams that are probably not going to be in the playoffs. It appears the way the league is stacking up. So those are definite must wins for us, which and then Odessa, you know, to close out the season. So, you know, we're going to play the last regular season game is going to be against probably the toughest team in the region, which you know, will give us a true measurement as where we are going into the regional tournament.